appreciate hearing information that is to our benefit, no matter what it is. About 6 months ago, I was looking for a new diet. And I wasn't looking for it so much like a quick fix. I just wanted like a life change, just to eat better. I'm almost 40 years old, and I could tell that I could use that. And so I wanted something, but something I could stick to, for the long haul. Listen, I have mad respect for you keto people. I was not made by the good Lord to be a keto person, okay? So, and I knew that. So I'm looking through almost everything's keto, and I respect that. It's just not for me. And as I was sorting through, I looked at the best-selling books in the dietary section, and I came across one that caught my attention, The Carnivore Diet, written by Dr. Shawn Baker. So I thought, and I knew a friend that had been on this, and I had the whole idea. I've learned a lot more about it, of course, buying the book and reading it, but the short of it is this: lots of red meat, 3 staples, lots of red meat, lots of salt, and lots of water. I love all 3 of those. I can do this. I can do it. It's similar to keto in ways. It's a little bit different. Lots of meat, and red meat in particular. I'm like between 4 and 5 months in, and I'm so grateful for that. I know for the short term it's an improvement of health, and I believe for the long term it's going to be also. We like good advice that we hear that helps us out. We greatly appreciate whenever it comes to our finances, good advice that we're given, advice that benefits us. I don't know if any of you, does anyone use Rakuten? Okay, couple, and not very many. I would highly recommend Rakuten. You heard of Ebates? That's what it is. Rakuten bought Ebates, and essentially what it is you click on a hyperlink when you buy something online, and you're going to buy it anyway if you're buying it online, but you also get paid commission off of everything you buy. As an example, most of the things we buy from Walmart, at least 1% or 2% back. Lowe's, 2% back. I don't know if Bass Pro is still on there. It used to be 4%. I don't shop at Bass Pro a whole lot anymore. I recently placed an order for $127 and change on AmericanEagle.com. Someone told me, I haven't bought anything from American Eagle since high school. I was like, yeah, pretty much me either. Anyway, so I placed an order for $127. It was 10% that day, commission. I got like $12 and so I was going to buy it anyway. So I like Rakuten. I appreciate those kinds of ideas. Maybe it's something that would be a benefit to you also. We like to hear things that are going to benefit us, and especially when it comes to our finances. Well, if you feel that way as I do, this is a lesson for the both of us. I have some advice. This isn't my personal thought here, but it's inspired advice that will improve your finances, and it will do the same thing to mine. It doesn't sound like it would, though, when you start talking about it, because the key to it is this: you need to give away more money. Well, that doesn't make sense. If you want to have money, you don't want to give money away, do you? Because then you're going to have less money, or so you would think. What this is a challenge from God. It's a faith exercise. And he says, listen, if your finances could use, and this isn't the only reason, by the way. We're going to look at it a little bit from that angle, though, this morning. He says, if your finances could use a little bit of work, I have a challenge for you. Consider what you're giving away, quote unquote, to me and for my cause. And why don't you see if you increase that, and then look back and see what that does for your finances. It's actually to our personal benefit, even financially, if we give more to the Lord. We're going to be working from 2 Corinthians chapter 8 mainly. We'll look a little bit in 9 and then go back to the previous letter just for one passage. But for the most part, we're going to be in the 8th chapter of 2 Corinthians. In verse 5, we read, they gave. Well, that doesn't help us out a whole lot because we don't have a clue just jumping midstream into verse 5 who the they are. We'll see later it refers back to verses 1 through 4, and it's the churches of Macedonia, which, if you're looking on a world map, are kind of, it's somewhat on the border of modern-day Greece, if that helps any. The churches of Macedonia, these people gave. Well, you read in the Bible everywhere, people, various people, strangers and people who aren't strangers, who do all these things. What does it mean for me? When there is a positive example of something that God commands in the Bible, it means that we, His people today, are supposed to emulate that. And that's why He's bringing this up, a positive example of people who had done nothing more than what the Lord commanded. And then notice in verse 11, He tells another group, the church in Corinth, and that's just, if you're keeping track of it on the map, that's just to the south, more in what we would call Greece today. He says, now you also must complete the doing of it. Now you also do as they did. Positive example based on what God instructed. That's why we have all these examples in the Bible of people. It's either a positive example we should do or a negative example that we should not do. Every single time. In this case, it's a positive example. People did what God instructed, what they should do. And we shouldn't overlook the challenge that they've met and accomplished here. Listen, it's not the easiest thing in the world to give away money. It doesn't matter whether that's a big sum or a small sum. Our family last week, Shelby, by the way, AJ, not as much, but Shelby was with us, and it does include AJ. But the family that was with us, that included Shelby, we stopped multiple times at Culver's. Our family loves Culver's. I hope Shelby does too. If not, she might not be eating there for a while now. We made multiple stops at these Culver's, in the areas that we were traveling. And on my diet, I do allow myself one small sweet. That helps me. One small sweet every day. And they're all getting, of course, their ice cream from Culver's, their flavor of the day. It doesn't sound any good, and something like chocolate I couldn't eat anyway. But I noticed Miss Frugal Autumn has taught me this, that at the bottom of the receipt, your Culver's receipt, you can go online and fill out this survey, and then you'll get a free scoop if you do that, and you can put it on a cone if you want. Now listen, I'm not a huge ice cream junkie. I love a good waffle cone. And if I can get just a little bit of sweet on that with an ice cream scoop or two on top, I mean, that sounds really good. So that's what I'm going to do. Vanessa didn't bring her phone in. Our seventh family member, Shelby, was so kind to fill out this survey for me, and then she wrote down the code, and so I take it up to the counter, and I'm just all smiles, the manager's up there. I said, I would like my free scoop on a waffle cone, because it says you can have it on a free cone on there. She looks at it and says, oh, I'm sorry. That's not good news. She said, you can't get a waffle cone with that. Well, this might be a biblical lesson. It doesn't say you can't get a waffle cone with this, but it says a free cone with this. Now, all right, what will it cost to get a waffle cone with this scoop on it? She rings it up, $1.38, I think she said. I thought for a couple seconds. I said, no, thanks, I'm good. It's not much money. I didn't want it that badly, but I thought for free, I'll use it as my free treat or my small sweet treat for the day. But I only wanted it if it was free. I didn't want to give $1.38 for something I really just didn't greatly want anyway. It's not easy to part with money, even if it's a small amount. This can be true of our giving of God, just like it is with anything else. You ever find it difficult to part with money whenever it comes to the opportunity and in the worship of our God? We shouldn't overlook the challenge there that's involved. Maybe this will help. Verse 8 of 2 Corinthians 8, he says, I speak not by commandment. Whew, okay, so I don't have to do it. That's not what he means by this. In fact, if you look back at the verse that we read just a moment ago, verse 11 of 2 Corinthians 8, he says, now you also must do it. No, it is a command that's being given. What he's saying here is I'm taking the approach with you of not only looking at it like a strict order that God has handed out. Now, he has given a strict order about it, but he says we ought to view it as so much more than that. I speak not by commandments. It's not that there's no commandment. Actually, when he writes earlier to these people, 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 and 2, he says, now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given orders, someone who's in charge, giving an order, an inspired apostle. Does that sound like that's an option for us? Your boss at work gives you an order. You tell your coworker, oh, that means we don't have to do this if we don't want. Well, that's a command, right? He gives a command just like he did to the churches of Galatia. Galatia is a province made up of all these cities, And he's given orders to all these different cities, the same instruction. The churches, plural, of Macedonia, that's a province with all these cities. He's given the same instructions to all of those. He writes to the city and the church, one, in Corinth, and he gives the same instruction. All the churches were receiving this same teaching. Positive example, command of God, meaning it has something to do with us today. So you also must do. It's a command. On the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collections when I come. It's something everyone is to do at a certain time on the first day of the week. Well, let me bore you just for a minute here, and then we'll move on, hopefully, to the more interesting things. Just the construct of what's stated. In the original language, you have an adjective. It's a describer. That's mia, and it looks kind of funny up here. It's a little different with Greek font, which we don't have on that computer. But mia is the adjective translated as first, and kata is the preposition, on or upon. And when these two are used grammatically with one another in the original dialect, relative to time, it means on every first. You can find this in Thayer's Greek-English lexicon, Arton Gingrich's of the same, Vincent's Word Studies in the New Testament, the Exegetical Dictionary of the New Testament, any reliable source on the Koine Greek language will state this rule to be the case. And that's why you might have a little different rendition than what I just read in the New King James. The ESV, NASB, the NIV translate it this way: on the first day of every week. Young's literal, true to its name, translates it a little more literally when it says on every first day of the week. So it's not like, hey, on a first day, do this at some point during the year. It's do this every first day of the week. How many first days do we have in a year? 52, typically. Everyone, at least 52. Last year, we actually had 53. And I only know that because for my taxes, I have to calculate that every year. So I remember that. Oh, that's a unique one. That was 53 first days. But the point is this, that every first day of the week, this is key though, as a person has prospered or had income, he or she is to give something back to God each time. It's vital. The Lord's work in an area depends on our faithfulness to the teaching. Sometimes it comes up, well, I don't get an income every week. I get paid bi-weekly, or I get paid monthly. As he or she has prospered, I'm convinced that a person is not obligated to give every first day if he or she has not received income that week. I believe it absolutely could be given in a bi-weekly rate if a person's paid bi-weekly or monthly. Some don't feel comfortable with that, and I mean, that's fine too if you want to instead space the same contribution out over those weeks. But as we have prospered, as we have income, each one of us is to lay something aside for God. But I have a question for you. What about the times that we're not able to make it to our local worship assembly? Let's say I wake up with the dreaded stomach bug and I can't leave the house. And I have God's money that I've set aside. I'm not feeling well. Well, 3 minutes, does that magically then become my money because I wasn't able to make it, to give it today? That's still God's money, right? And it's understood. We need to give that at our earliest convenience the next time we're with the saints. We missed you all last week on Sunday, but we also had a great time with the Kabul congregation. I hadn't assembled with that bunch probably for 30 years. I didn't think I'd know anyone when I went there, and I did know a few people. Strangely, I ran into our neighbor for like my whole growing up years. I had no idea that he was a member of that congregation, so that was kind of neat. But we went there because Jackson, you guys know Jackson, was preaching. He preaches there twice a month. Man, he did an outstanding job. I'm so proud. He's actually going to fill in for me. I think it's like September 15th, one of the times. So you guys will get to hear him and the great work that he's doing in the kingdom. But when we were with our Kabul family, we weren't here with our family where our commitment for contribution is. We weren't sick, but what we'd set aside from the Lord was kept to the side for the Lord. And this week our contribution is going to be double what it normally is because we're making up what it was when we weren't able to be with our church family. Our church family depends on our continued faithfulness to this ordinance of God to keep things running. And by the way, in giving this study, I don't want anyone to think that the church is having financial issues. Not at all is that the case. I definitely don't want anyone to think the preacher's looking for a raise because he's not, okay? Please, it's neither one of those. But we believe in teaching the whole counsel of God. For any visitors we might have, this isn't something that you're going to hear every week or every month even. But it's something that's a part of God's instruction that benefits us. He wants our lives to be better. And it requires faithfulness to this command for it to be so. But He doesn't want us to give because we have to. He wants us to want to give to Him. And we should desire to do such a thing. Back in chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians, verse 8, I think it becomes clearer when we read the whole verse and don't cut it off right in the middle. He says, I speak not by commandment, but I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others. He says, what I'm telling you actually gives you a chance for you to show how much you love and appreciate God for everything He's done for you. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to give money for a thing or to someone, but have you ever noticed that if you really care about the cause or if you really care about the person, it's really not nearly as difficult to give? As a freshman in college, I met this beautiful, funny, amazing young lady. And I was a poor college kid. I had $400, I think, to my name in my bank account. And after I met her, that $400 in the bank account became zero very quickly. And I had 2 part-time jobs, and I lived from paycheck to paycheck for 2 years. And it was worth it. I don't regret it at all. All the meals that were bought, all the gas money, whoa, that was spent, all the treats, all the skating, all the movies, all this stuff is good. Presents left and right. I didn't mind because of how much I loved her. About a year later, I met Vanessa, and no, I'm kidding. It's Vanessa all along. Vanessa back then, Vanessa now. I don't like to spend money, especially on things what I consider to be wasteful. Last week with our family, our church family, our real family, it was Vanessa, it was Shelby, it was Shane and Cindy and Neil and Barbara and her parents. What a great time we had in Kentucky for 3 days at the Ark. I don't have a picture, guys, by the way, still of all of us. If you have one, would you mind? I don't know if you have it or somebody does, I think, for me to get a picture. But just our family here standing in front of the Ark. I'll be honest with you, that took a lot of money to get out there, to get back, to buy the tickets there, all the food there. While we were there, it was short enough, it's like it wasn't even worth trying to buy food to cook. We didn't even have the time while we were there. So, I mean, it's just for 6 people. Just, you know how the cost of everything is right now. The Creation Museum is set up brilliantly. You enter at the gift shop and you leave through the gift shop. Well, thankfully, the Ark, you just leave through the gift shop. That's the one we went to first. And we set foot in the gift shop. The kids are, Dad, Mom, can I get this? I'm the cool dad, So I'm like, okay, everyone can get one thing that you really want. Okay. They bring the first one to me. I'm a smart dad. I flip it over and look at the price tag before I look at the object very much. And okay, yeah, I can do that. It's not too bad. And then one of the stuffed animals gets brought to me. I flip it over, look at the tag, and I nearly have a coronary. I said, okay, let me revise these rules just a little bit. Here's what I meant by what I said. Everyone can get one reasonable thing from the gift shop. I'm a cool dad, We get up there and we're paying for all of our stuff. And guess who the only person was who didn't get a souvenir from the Ark experience? The guy footing the bill for all of it. And we get up there, everyone's happy, Dad's happy, they ring it all up, and that'll be $127. Whoa, these were the reasonable gifts, one thing. That's a lot of money for somebody like me, that whole trip put together. I don't regret it for a bit. I'd do it all over again. Not because if it were just me, I never would have even gone there probably. I'm just that way, It was cool though, I'm glad we did. It's about the people that I was with. And because I love them, I don't mind to spend silly amounts of money on a trip out to the Ark for 3 days. How do we feel about God? If we really love him and we really believe in his cause, it makes it so much easier to give to him whenever he instructs us to do so. This is something that might help us. Verses 9 and 10, you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Caden, you read this. That though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, that you through his poverty might become rich. It's kind of strange if you look at this. The whole thing, chapters 8 and 9, is all about giving. And then there's this awesome parenthetical statement about Jesus and everything he did. But really it's about everything he gave. And then in verse 10 he says, in this I'm actually giving advice talking about the account of our Lord. It is to your advantage, or it will benefit you. How so? He says the next time you're given the opportunity to show your love and appreciation for what God has done for you in the worshipful act of giving, remember Jesus and everything he gave up for you. The one who gave up a home in heaven to live in this place for 33 and a half years. The one who is in the form of glorified God and stripped himself not of his deity, but of his brilliant presence and so many of his divine privileges. That's Philippians 2. To live as a miserable man. The one who is so filthy rich, he owns everything in heaven and everything on the earth, and yet he gave up all of those riches so he could come here and live out an existence as a poor peasant. The same one, the very Jesus, who is the life, and yet he gave up his own life to experience miserable, painful death so that you could have life. And when Jesus had given everything he possibly could, it said that he stretched out his arms and he gave himself, the last thing that was left. He who is incredibly rich in every way became poor so that you through his poverty might become rich. How fitting, the apostle says, the next time you give, I ask you to reconsider what God has given for you. And not simply to look to this, oh man, I don't like to give things. But instead, wow, what an honor that I get a chance to express just a small token of my appreciation for everything my God has given for me. When you're talking about giving, one of the first questions that comes up, usually it's not, do I need to give? It's how much? How much should I give? I want to show you something from this passage as to why that's the wrong first question to ask. And I don't say that as a criticism. It's just there's another way of looking at it. Chapter 9, verses 6 through 11. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. And he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give. Now, as we go through, I want you to notice all the benefits God promises from his own mouth will come when we give as he has told us. Verse 8, and God is able to make all grace or favor, blessing, abound towards you, that you always, having all sufficiency in everything, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, he is dispersed abroad, he is given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. Verse 11, while you are enriched in everything for all liberality, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. Now you think there might be a little promise of blessing attached to giving that's provided here? And just to make clear, that word enrich does not mean millionaire. That's not at all what he's stating, but it's to have more than enough is what enrich means. You realize how spoiled we are. See, when we hear rich, we think the millionaires, and really maybe even many more, the billionaires. Certainly the billionaires, maybe still the millionaires. Biblically, the word rich just means you have more than enough. We are so rich in this nation. We have been so blessed for so long, we don't even understand what riches are and just how filthy rich we become, even during somewhat of a difficult era. But I want to go back to this. The key to this promise is our sowing. We will reap, or we will receive from God on the basis of what we have sown or what we have given. What he's saying here is really is nothing more than basic gardening 101. This is great. We live in the Ozarks and we get the down-home life. Okay, gardening, we've all done that before. He says, when you garden, what he's implying is you don't ask the question, how much seed do I want to sow? Or how hard do I want to work out in the garden? If that were the question, you're not going to do any work and you're not going to sow any seeds. It's not about that, is it? It's about the harvest or what you bring in. So you plant or you sow, you give to the ground on the basis of what you want to receive. Just to give an example, in our garden, I don't know if you can call it that, we have 12 grow pots. We have a bunch of cucumbers and tomatoes that we plant in those. And last year I planted 9 cucumber seeds. Any guesses how many plants we had, cucumber plants? 9. 9 cucumber plants from 9 cucumber seeds. We didn't quite get the harvest that we wanted from that. So this year going into the planting, I didn't ask, I wonder how many seeds I'm planting on this year. How many do I feel like? No, it's how many cucumbers do I want to receive? I wanted a lot more, so I planted double. I planted 18 seeds. Guess how many cucumber plants we have this year? 18. Man, we had a lot better harvest. You see, when you're gardening, you don't ask yourself, how much work do I want to do? How many seeds do I want to plant? It's what kind of a harvest do I want to receive? He says, giving to God, really it's basic gardening 101. You understand that. Don't ask, how much should I give? Ask, how much blessing would I like to receive from my Heavenly Father? And plant, sow, or give in accordance to what it is that you have in mind. If you don't want to receive hardly anything, don't give hardly anything to Him. You want to receive nothing from God, you don't want His blessing, His favor to be found on you, don't give anything to Him. If you want to receive much blessing, sow much in the offering. Verse 7, but as you abound in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in all diligence, and in your love for us. He says you recognize the importance of trying to be great in everything you do. It's biblical. Ecclesiastes 9:10, whatever your hand finds to do, give it everything you have. Do it with all your might. I'm not great at everything I do, are you? I do try to be, though, but I know that I'm not. Our family started playing a little bit of golf again. I can't help it. I get a little addictive, and I want to be great. Probably won't be, but I want to be great at that. No matter what it is, we should seek to be great. How about in these things, though? In faith. You think your trust in God's important? How much of that do you want? Abound in it. You want to say the right thing and be fluent in communicating your ideas? Abound in it. You want to be sharp in the Scriptures? Yeah, we want to abound in knowledge in all of our diligent ways. We want to love just like Christ Himself loves. Abound in all these things. He says, do you understand? All these things are so vital. You get that, right? And then he concludes the sentence with this, verse 7. Make sure as you see these things is indispensable. Without faith, you can't please Him. A diligent student of God is approved by Him. He who does not love does not know God. He who loves knows God. Vital, right? If you see these as imperative, see this grace or giving in the same light. See that you abound in this grace also. That word is translated, abound. It actually means to overflow. You have to forgive me for my juvenile mind, but when we were on our trip and stopping at these different culvers, I think this one was in the capital of Indiana, Indianapolis. And the kids were super pumped about these fountain drinks. We're a family of 6, so we don't eat out very often. And when we do, the kids usually don't get drinks. It's just water that they have. Well, this came with a meal. So, they're all pumped up. And they get over there and they start pushing these soda levers. And Kyler has his own cup. He's reaching up, and he can't see into the cup very well. But he pushes it, and he doesn't get just a little bit into that cup. He wants to fill it all the way. So he pushes it in, and he holds it there, and he holds it there. And before long, it's running down his shirt sleeve. As a dad, I really didn't mind that much. And I was thinking, what he's doing, that tells me something about his heart. He's excited, and he wants so much of that soda, he's not going to leave just a centimeter of space left. So he kept going until it was just running over because of how much he wanted that. That's the same word, the concept that's used here. See that you abound or overflow in this grace also. Well, why would you do that? That would express something of your heart, wouldn't it? You want God and your relationship with Him to be everything it possibly can be. So in your giving, just like every other aspect of your life, you seek for that compartment to overflow. Could it be said in your offering of God, it's like Tyler at Culver's filling up his drink. You want it so much. It's just right over the top. But you might be thinking, here's the issue. I want to have an abundant, overflowing offering, but I don't have a lot of money. I don't make a lot of money. And so I can't give an offering like that one. Well, hang on just a second before you draw that conclusion. Back in chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians, verses 11 and 12, he says, "Now you also must complete the doing of it, that just as there was the readiness to desire it, so there also may be a completion out of what you have. For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what he does not have." In other words, God does not judge a person's offering to be abundant, bountiful, and overflowing on the basis of the amount of money or the dollars that were put into the plate, but on the amount of sacrifice or percentage that a person is willing to offer. In other words, my giving should be proportionate to my income. And let me give you an example. What if I were to tell you, I have no idea what anyone gives, and I'm glad. I don't want to know. I have no plans to find out, just as a full disclosure here. But as a random example, let's say that I knew and I could tell you someone today is going to put in $2 into the offering plate. Would you think of that to be an abundant or an overflowing offering? Frankly, I don't think any of us would say, oh, yeah, that's no, we wouldn't feel that way. Did you know that God might, though? And let's say that the person who gave $2, I know that he or she has an income, I have no clue, made $1,000 this week, and then put $2 into the offering plate. You do the math, Marty, I'm pretty sure that's 0.2 or 1/5 of 1%. That's not very much in proportion to the income, is it? But what if I were to tell you that I know someone else in this gathering today is putting in $2, and he or she brought in $10 this week? That's 20% of everything the person made. You see, God looks at these offerings that are the same amount in a different way, not because they're a different amount, but because there's a different sacrifice or percentage that went into that. There's a story, one of my favorites, of Jesus, and in Bible times, people watched what everyone gave. That's weird to us, isn't it? That's the culture, though. They watched as everyone went by and put in. Jesus and his disciples, following this custom, they're sitting by watching what everyone is giving in the temple treasury. And these guys are coming in, putting in big sums. We don't know the exact numbers. Probably some tens of dollars equivalency, hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars. And I'm sure the disciples' eyes are getting big when they're seeing these big offerings, as people are going by. And then there's this woman who comes in, and she drops in what's worth just a portion of a single American cent. Now, what's that worth in value? And Jesus stops the viewing of the disciples. He says, whoa, guys, did you just see that? That's giving right there. And they don't understand. It's like, she gave nothing. Well, no, there's not a lot of amount. There's not a lot of dollars, as we would call it right there. But he says, here's the difference. I know what everyone made this week. And he says, these people were putting in, the people are giving tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. They may be making tens of thousands of dollars through the week. And he says, this woman, she only had a penny that she brought in. And she gave 100% of everything she had. It was the most bountiful, overflowing gift that was offered that day. And yet it was the least in value. Don't feel like if you have just a little bit of money, or if you don't make much money, that you can't give an abundant offering. It's not about the amount of dollars that are put into the plate. It's about the amount of sacrifice or the percentage that we make whenever we do give an offering. Verses 1 through 4, moreover, brethren, we make known to you the grace of God bestowed, poured out upon the churches of Macedonia, that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded in the riches of their liberality. For I bear witness that according to their ability, yes, and beyond their ability, they were freely willing, imploring, or begging us with much urgency that we would receive the gift that they had presented to the Lord. Some background to these people. The Macedonians had been through 3 civil wars recently. If you've read much about the Civil War in our country that lasted for 4 years, it took America, and especially in the South, because of the destruction and burning of the cities a lot of times by the youth following the battles, it took our country a good 100 years to recover from the effects, the economy of the Civil War, especially in the South, the Reconstruction period. Well, these people had had not 1, not 2, but 3 civil wars. They were severely impoverished. It was so bad that a Roman dictator did the unthinkable. He, Tiberius Caesar, reduced the tax burden that he had placed on the people because he knew they were in such a bad spot. And then you add to it the persecution that the early church was facing, being imprisoned, losing their jobs, their homes being burned down, their goods being stolen. They were poor upon poor. And here the apostle shows up after he's given them this instruction about giving. And when he sees what they've offered to God, it almost sounds like he feels badly for them. Some would suggest, we don't know this for sure, but some would suggest based on the terminology that they implored or begged or had to convince him to take this. And he says, here's the response from heaven. God has poured out his favor on these people. The people who are so impoverished, who didn't have anything to give, you sure couldn't tell it by their offering. And God has blessed them beyond measure for what they've offered to him. These people understood giving, not because it began with economics for them. Verse 5, and not only as we had hoped, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and then to us by the will of God. Listen, giving isn't about our money. God is not after our money. He wants something much greater than that. He wants our heart. He wants us. He wants our lives. And when he has that, our giving is merely going to be a reflection of what our God already has. These people understood giving. They first gave themselves to the Lord. The question is, do we understand the principle that's behind giving? And have we given all that we are, our lives over, to God? I had a challenge put in front of me a few weeks ago by a friend, and I want to do the same for you. It really meant a lot to me. If you want to know where your relationship with God stands, try this. It's humbling, I'll tell you that for sure. I ask everybody, individual, couple, or family, we're going to get home, we're going to be starving, go home and eat your food and all that. When you get a chance this afternoon, if you don't have time, do it tomorrow. If you can't tomorrow, do it sometime this week as an individual, as a couple, or if it fits, as a family. Everybody get out 2 things. Number 1, calendars. And number 2, your finances. And everybody, look at these together. And ask yourself this. Where did we, and have a category for God, his family, and outreach. Put all that, everything spiritual in one category. And then everything that's more related to this place, that's the physical, put it in another category. And see where the family has spent, the couple, the individual, has spent the most amount of time, the most amount of money in the last month. Just 1 month over this last month. It may surprise you as you look through it. And I say that for this reason. I guarantee you, wherever we spend the most amount of our time and the most amount of our money, that's what's most important to us in life. Through our finances and through our calendars, what's the most important thing? It's not about starting with giving. It's about giving just being a reflection of the relationship that we already enjoy with our Heavenly Father. I know this is somewhat of a challenging lesson, just like the challenge that I put in front of you. I don't want anyone to think that that I look down on our congregation or that I have a lack of confidence. I don't. I feel just like Paul, like he felt toward the Corinthians. He says this, "We have great confidence in you." I have no idea what anyone in this church makes. I have no idea what anyone in this church gives, and I don't need to know either one. The church is not in financial turmoil. I am not looking for a raise, just to be very clear. This is the whole counsel of God. God wants us to have a better life than what we currently do. And whether you're already giving to God what is right, and maybe even beyond that, even if you're not, I have confidence in you to begin. That's the confidence I have in every family member of this congregation. We'll close with verse 24. Here's one final challenge. He says, "Therefore, show to them and before the churches the proof of your love and of our boasting on your behalf." Here in a little bit, we have the wonderful privilege of taking of the Lord's Memorial Feast. We had a study on that recently. And then we're going to have the chance to give. And as we do that today, I encourage you to think about this in a couple of ways. It's a chance for each of us, yours truly included, to show our love and appreciation for all that God has done for us. It's to our benefit, even financially, for us to do so. I hope that's not our number one motivation for it, but it will help us even in our finances if we give to God the way that we should. Number two, I love how traditionally in the church, giving is placed after the Lord's Supper. I've always felt like that is so fitting. Because after we've reflected on everything Jesus has given for us, then we get a chance to, it's just a tiny token compared to what he's done, but to show our gratitude for everything that he's given. But above all, I hope that you take away from this study, the most important thing about giving is not that it begins in economics, but that we first give ourselves over to God. If there's anyone among us who has yet to do that, and you understand how much Jesus has given for you, now's your chance to give back to him. What he really wants is not your money. What he really wants is you. He wants your heart, and he wants your life. And you can give that to him through dying to yourself and becoming alive to him through repentance and baptism because you believe in him and you're proud to acknowledge that before everyone who is here this day. And a true blessed life today can begin with him. Yes, we have the chance to give to him here in just a little while, but more importantly, you have the chance to give your life to him right now as we stand and sing.